Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Gopinatha, Radha Gopinatha, Shri Radha. Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jam Vishnu Param Shivaraj Kachar Shlotar Shlotar Svine Grace Abhaicharan Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, Text 9. Yadvim amutpatta katam dvichevakya vajra. Yadvena mutpatta katam dvichavakya vajra. Nishplushta paurasha bhagam niraye patantam. Nishplushta paurasha bhagam niraye patantam. Tradvatito jagati puttapatam jalebhe. Tradvatito jagati putrapatam jalebhe. Dukta vasuni vasuta sakalani yena. Dukta vasuni vasuta sakalani yena. Yadvena mutpata katam dvichasakya vajra. Nishplushta paurasha bhagam niraye patantam. Tatvatito jagati putra patam jalepe Dukta vasuni vasuda sakalani yena Yatvena mutpatakatam vichvichavakya vachara Nishplushta paurasha bhagam niraye patantam Tatrati tochakati putra patam jalepe Dukta vasuni vasuda sakalani yena Yat when Venam unto King Vena Utpattagatam going astray from the righteous path Dvija of the Brahmanas Vakya words of cursing Vajra thunderbolt Nishplushta being burnt by Paurusha great deeds Bhagam opulence Niraya into hell Patantam going down Tratva by delivering Artitaha so being prayed for Jagati on the world Putrapadam the possession of the sun Cha as well as Lepe achieved Dukta exploited Vasuni produce Vasuda the earth Sakalani all kinds of Yena by whom. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Acharya Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Maharaj Vena went astray from the path of righteousness, and the Brahmanas chastised him by the thunderbolt curse. By this King Vena was burnt with his good deeds and opulence, and was en route to hell. The Lord, by his causeless mercy, descended as his son by the name of Prithu, delivered the condemned King Vena from hell, and exploited the earth by drawing all kinds of crops as produce. Purport. According to the system of Varnashrama Dharma, the pious and learned Brahmanas were the natural guardians of society. The Brahmanas, by their learned labor of love, would instruct the administrator kings how to rule the country in complete righteousness, and thus the process would go on as a perfect welfare state. The kings or the Kshatriya administrators would always consult the council of learned Brahmanas. They were never autocratic monarchs. The scriptures like Manusamhita and other authorized books of the great sages were guiding principles for ruling the subjects, and there was no need for less intelligent persons to manufacture a code of law in the name of democracy. The less intelligent mass of people have very little knowledge of their own welfare, as a child has very little knowledge of its future well-being. The experienced father guides the innocent child towards the path of progress, and the childlike mass of people need similar guidance. The standard welfare codes are already there in the Manusamhita and other Vedic literatures. The learned Brahmanas would advise the king in terms of those standard books of knowledge and with reference to the particular situation of time and place. Such Brahmanas were not paid servants of the king, and therefore they had the strength to dictate to the king on the principles of scriptures. This system continued even up to the time of Maharaj Chandragupta, and the Brahmana Chanakya was his unpaid prime minister. Maharaj Vena did not adhere to this principle of ruling, and he disobeyed the learned Brahmanas. The broad-minded Brahmanas were not self-interested, but looked to the interest of complete welfare for all the subjects. They wanted to chastise King Vena for his misconduct, and so prayed to the Almighty Lord as well as cursed the king. Long life, obedience, good reputation, righteousness, prospects of being promoted to higher planets, and blessings of great personalities are all vanquished simply by disobedience to a great soul. One should strictly try to follow in the footsteps of great souls. Maharaj Vena became a king undoubtedly due to his past deeds of righteousness, but because he willfully neglected the great souls, he was punished by the loss of all the above-mentioned acquisitions. In the Vamana Purana, the history of Maharaj Vena and his degradation is fully described. When Maharaj Prithu heard about the hellish condition of his father Vena, who was suffering from leprosy in the family of Mlecha, he at once brought the former king to Kurukshetra for his purification and relieved him of all sufferings. Maharaj Prithu, the incarnation of God, descended by the prayer of the Brahmanas to rectify the disorders on earth. He produced all kinds of crops, but at the same time he performed the duty of a son who delivers his father from hellish conditions. The word putra means one who delivers from hell, put. That is a birthy son. Amma Kyanati Brandasya Karanchana Shalakaya Chaksharon Militam Vyena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, thank you for coming or listening online. So we are into chapter 7, scheduled incarnations, that Lord Brahma is explaining to his exalted son Narad Muni. And in today's verse now we come to the Lord's incarnation as Prithu Maharaj, which is a Shakti Vaishnava empowered with specifically with the Shakti, the power to perfectly rule the subjects. And that is the topic also that we hear in today's purport discussed, mainly, about how subjects are supposed to be ruled on which principles, and how those principles are supposed to be enforced. So, yeah, let's start with pastime or purport. Yeah, maybe let's briefly go into the pastime of Maharaj Vena being cursed by those Brahmanas and then Prithu Maharaj descending. So, as most of you know, perhaps, there was Vena's father, King Anga, was not able to beget a son, and for a king that's very important because he's concerned with eventually at the right time handing over the kingdom, then to be able to ensure first of all that the kingdom will continue properly, the welfare with the welfare of the state, and secondly also for himself to be able to then, it's not fully compulsory for a king to take vanaprastha. He can even till the rest of his life rule if he does it properly, but many kings in Vedic times, they still did it to wanting to fully focus on then their spiritual life, and so also wanted King Anga. But first of all, so he wanted a son he couldn't get, and so they performed. I don't remember the exact details and everything, but usually they did in those times. They approached some brahmanas, performed some rituals to be able to get a son, but the problem was that actually his wife was not very qualified. She was, I think, the daughter of death personified or something like that. So it's pretty inauspicious, and thus their son that they got, this King Vena, was unfortunately also very not pious at all, but was quite demonic. So much so that he even in his childhood, while playing with the playmates, he just randomly just killed them for fun. So I can imagine how demonic King Vena was actually. Even though being born from a great father like King Anga, he comes in the line, I think, of Dhruva Maharaj, like it's described in 4th canto, all those descendants. And I'm not sure, either Dhruvamaraj or Priyavrata. One of like those two lines are coming from Uttanapad, described in the 4th canto, from Uttanapad being son of Svayambhuva Manu, the first Manu of, in the creation. And so King Vena was unfortunately very demonic, and he was not trainable, nothing. So his father, King Anga, eventually just got fed up and took it as a blessing of the Lord, as an excuse to just leave early his duties as a king and take Vanaprastha, only go to the forest. So that's what he did. But then his kingdom was left with this demoniac king, and the Brahmanas, like we here in the purport discussed, that they were not blind to the welfare of the common people. They didn't just focus on their spiritual life, but they were naturally compassionate and anxious for the welfare of everyone. And so they couldn't bear seeing this king doing his atrocities. So they tried to advise him very wisely and in a nice way, but he wouldn't listen at all, and he rather, on the contrary, he blasphemed them, blasphemed the Lord, basically told them, what are you guys doing? You're talking about the Supreme Lord and everything. Don't you know that actually I'm the Supreme here? So you should think your duty is like I'm Naradeva, because another king in Vedic times another name of king is Naradeva, so the Lord of the humans, which is for a good reason, because actually a proper king is supposed to rule on behalf of the Supreme Lord, so take fully care of all the subjects, materially and spiritually, to maintain them. And thus he is considered a representative of the Lord, and thus called Naradeva. But of course King Vena was not at all like that, but he wanted the Brahmanas to see him like that, and to not only like that, not only as a representative, but to just worship him rather than the Lord. So he blasphemed like that, and at that point the Brahmanas decided, that doesn't go anywhere, it's just getting worse, and so they cursed him, and so he was cursed to death by, I think today it's mentioned, by a thunderbolt. And so King Vena was dead, but then soon after the Brahmanas saw that, like, in the sky there was a cloud of dust and everything, and they saw many inauspicious signs again as well. So they found that, yes, without a king, still it's even worse for the subjects, because then all the thieves and rogues take over, randomly just harass the subjects. And so then they prayed to the Lord, as we hear today, to make an proper solution. And so the Lord descended, and first actually how they did it, they took the dead body of King Vena, because they decided, he is demoniac, but actually his body is coming from a great line, great dynasty. So there's I forgot the word that's used there in the section of Bhagavatam and purport. But the semen, there's the power, good power in the semen of this line, so they didn't want to get the line stopped. And so they took his body and performed, I don't know exactly, but some sacrifice or some rituals to churn the body, all right, And so from that, first then came out some sinful being, I think called Nahusha, who was like a black dwarf, and explained actually he practically absorbed all the sins, relieved this body from the sins from King Vena, and he was then the forefather of some low-class, degraded, sinful people living somewhere in the mountains. And so when they then continued, then from appeared Maharaj Prithu with his consort Archie. And I mean, we might not have time to go through the whole pastime, but basically, what Prithu Maharaj did, we know, was that he, because at that time, like all the people, they were suffering also because Mother Earth had withdrawn her resources to a great extent because of because she wants to give her resources for the purpose of the people using it for yajna, for the Lord, and thus living prosperously, piously. Whereas because she was exploited by demonic forces, so she withdrew her resources, and so Maharaj Prithu forced her to again make herself fully available for the benefit of everyone. And so eventually she fled. He was threatening her with bow and arrow, and then she explained to him why she withdrew her resources, and then as the solution, then she was actually literally milked by, how do you say, like by all different sections of society, and like the demigods, the demons, the sages, they drew from her what they particularly need for their welfare. And so that's briefly for the pastime. And then in today's purport, so Prabhupada discusses basically that the importance of the Varnashrama Dharma system, of how the society can be prosperous only if there's a pious king who enforces the religious principles to be followed, rather than just like today, where it's our democracy is simply ruled by different selfish people, and with no proper knowledge, no real interest for the welfare of others. And Prabhupada explains there that these kings, they were not autocratic monarchs, in contrast to the exception of King Vena here. And how can you say that specifically? Because even though they were the monarch, they had in one sense they had all the power to rule, but actually they themselves knew that they have to obey the orders or the directions of the Brahmanas, that they are inferior to the Brahmanas, that the Brahmanas, the first class of society, that they know best what's for the welfare of everyone, and so the king is simply so the administrator who carries out the orders and directions of the Brahmanas. And that's how why is that so perfect? Because the Prabhupada explains here, the Brahmanas, they from their side, their whole life is simply for the spiritual realization and for the welfare of everyone. They don't have any selfish interest, and thus we see that they don't even get paid by the king. They simply do it as their duty. And of course, in turn, the king takes care of the Brahmanas, gives in charity and everything. But it's not that they, for whatever they do, that they expect anything in return. And that's how actually really the interest of the state, of the well-being of everyone, can be upheld. And Prabhupada, one important point tells here is that the less intelligent mass of people have very little knowledge of their own welfare, as a child has very little knowledge of its future well-being. So, because the whole point is, a main problem with the concept of democracy is, especially now in Kali Yuga, that the people, we don't even know what's good for ourselves. So how then can, if we then try to artificially a system where the state is ruled by the people, which basically means by unqualified, random, people. And so how they, first of all, don't even know what's their welfare, neither do they have any qualification of carrying anything out properly. So it's doomed from the beginning to the end. So there's, in the Vedic system, the Brahmanas, they know perfectly what's needed for the well-being of the people, and the king also knows to a large extent. They also learn it, but they fully follow the Brahmanas' directions, and so they rule really for the welfare of the people. And Prabhupada gives the example here, like as a child has little knowledge of its future well-being, and thus the experienced father guides the innocent child towards the path of progress, and the childlike mass of people need similar guidance. So, it's people in general, they are, they don't know what's right, what's wrong, just as a child. A child needs always to be taken care of all the time. It's because otherwise it just runs into trouble. And so that's the same with the general mass of people. And Prabhupada tells India how like this knowledge is specifically given in scriptures like Manu Samhita. And he mentions that this system was followed even to the time of Maharaj Chandragupta, who had his famous Prime Minister Chanakya Pandit. And like Prabhupada many times quotes Chanakya Pandit because he very, like in modern times, even still knows properly how the principles for ruling a state, how they are to be followed and all of that. And like moral principles especially. And so then he briefly mentioned the history of Maharaj Vena, how, so the second part of the purport is then about Maharaj Prithu, that like we hear in today's verse, interestingly, that he mainly we think of that he descended to by the request of the Brahmas, so to fulfill their desire and to thus take care of all the suffering people, and like even plants and animals also suffer by such ruling. But also here in the second part and in the verse we hear that Maharaj Prithu also descended as a perfect son to deliver his father, even though his father was so demoniac and didn't deserve that. But still he delivered him by his closest mercy. And that's, Prabhupada mentions, because in Sanskrit the name for son is Putra, and it comes from a name for a hell which is called Put, and Tra means deliver. So a worthy son is such a son who, by his pious deeds, delivers his father from possibly any hellish condition. And in this case, he definitely would have gone to hell, so he got delivered also by Maharaj Prithu. Okay, Kranta Chima Bhagavatam Ki Jai.